got my Mulan shirt on and I'm ready to go. Hello everyone and welcome to Sustainably Sakura, a series in which I teach you how to make your cosplay more sustainable. Today, we're going to talk about how I made a Mulan cosplay almost entirely zero waste for Katsucon 2022. First of all, I just want to take a second to tell you what zero waste means. Basically, in short, zero waste is making sure as little as possible goes to the landfill. There's a lot more nuance than that, but there's a lot of people on YouTube that have already kind of said what zero waste is, so I'll link some videos in the description that I think describe it very well. I want to take a second to warn you that there are some videos that are missing because I was in Katsu Crunch and I just didn't have time to film them, to be honest. If you're a cosplayer that makes your own cosplays, I think this is relatable and something you can totally understand. Starting with the sword, I made a blueprint in Illustrator. Luckily, I had pretty much all of the foam and other stuff I needed, and I have a lot of foam, as you can see, and supplies. One year for Black Friday, I bought every single size I could. I used paper tape to tape it down to the foam, as paper tape, it doesn't have any plastic in it, so I could compost it when I was done with it. And then I just used a normal ballpoint pen, or a Sharpie pen I had on hand, to trace everything onto the foam. To cut the foam, I just use a normal box cutter with snap-off blades, and then I sharpen it in between every few cuts. This helps with the longevity of the blade, so you're not constantly just throwing away these sharp metal objects that go to landfill. I probably only use 1 or 2 blades a year because I sharpen them so often. For this project, I had Weldwood contact cement on hand, in which I put it in an old Kewpie bottle that I had. You just spread it on, I used some old foam scraps, and then after about 5 minutes, you press it together. Here, I cut some of the bevel off, so I didn't have to Dremel all of it. The hilt I made from some old floor mat scrap foam, and then also 10mm foam scraps. So part of the hilt needed to be really rigid and stiff, and so I decided to sandwich it between 2 Warbler scraps I had. You can see I also had magnets that went in before I sandwiched the foam together. These magnets were from a bulk order I did a while back. The thing that I love about Warbler is it is almost infinitely usable. You can use the scraps for molding and sculpting things, and then also on top of that, some people will mold them together into sheets again. Some people I have seen used a pasta roller, which is a really cool idea. Maybe someday I'll invest in one. So after sandwiching the Warbler together, you get sometimes a really rough edge, and so I just Dremeled it down. I have a vacuum cleaner right there that sucks up any of the dust. All of the Dremeling for the foam I did outside because it's a lot of dust and I don't like cleaning that up in my house. I also didn't videotape that, so apologies there. This counts as part of the trash because the bag for the vacuum is going to go to landfill. So I primed everything with this Plaid FX primer. This is something new I bought, but I can use it for a ton of other projects. So for now, there is very little waste. It's just the stuff that I had to peel off from the lid. And it's a pretty simple just brush on primer. I liked it too because when I made this it was very cold out, so I couldn't plastic dip anything. It is also a flexible primer, so it's great for foam, and it's specifically I think formulated for foam. I decided to test out these products with this project as I'd never used them before, and with foam it's the perfect medium for this. So for the Warbler, I just used some watered down wood glue to prime it. You just mix it until it's not too thick, not too thin, and you brush it on and leave it to dry. Pretty simple, non-toxic, easy to use. For the blade of the sword, I used Plaid FX Metallic in Chainmail and also in Samurai Sword. And it's really easy to just brush on. It has great coverage. I think I only had to do 3 coats with this. For the hilt, I just used the samurai sword again, and then 2 acrylics I had on hand that are, one's just a gloss and one's slightly metallic. The end piece on the hilt is made from a foam dowel from my cosplay stash. This is before weathering. To weather, it's just watered down acrylics I used that I had on hand. Mostly you just mix it with quite a bit of water and then you dab everything off. Most people use a paper towel. I just used a really old towel I didn't care about whatsoever. And as you can see, it does add a little grunge, a little depth to the sword. It doesn't show up great on camera, but it does look a lot better in person. And for the leather strapping of the hilt, it's just an old vinyl leather I had on hand and acrylics to weather it. So here is the finished sword. It detaches for travel. I wasn't sure if I was going to fly or drive for this convention or future ones. As you can see, the magnets are set specifically so they'll only go on one way, and otherwise they'll repel. It makes it nice, so every time it is consistent. It's not the most stable thing, but it works. For the medallion, I also made this template in Illustrator. Circles aren't the easiest thing to cut, and so the edges got a little rough here. To fix that, I just added a 2mm strip around that I just contact cemented. This ring piece, it's just another cutout that I contact cemented on and then dremeled later. I used Plaid FX again. This time I used Golden Hour. And for the red metallics, I just mixed a couple reds I had on hand. So as you can see, that's just one coat. Things turned out pretty nice, and just adding some more. Really, it doesn't have a lot of brush strokes, which I really like, and it's almost too shiny and metallic, which is surprising. For the string, I didn't have anything on hand that I really was in love with, so I bought some new stuff. Unfortunately, it did come wrapped in plastic, so that did go to the landfill. A little bit of weathering and then the red, it turned out really nice. The piece on top was just a scrap piece of Worbla that I shaped into a circle. It is held on by contact cement, and it held up all through Katsucon, so here's hoping it holds up again. During quarantine, I got really lucky and I found a cosplayer that was moving. She gave me 3 large totes of fabric, including a smaller tote, and it filled up my fabric shelf like none other. If you want to see how I organize my fabric, make sure to follow me on TikTok. Every single fabric I used for this project was on hand, so I didn't have to buy anything new. The most sustainable thing you can do is use what you have. Both of the zippers I used for this project were from a bulk order that I had from the past. I made mock-ups from scrap fabric for this project to make sure I had enough of each fabric. Before I cut, I like to lay down my pattern pieces in the most economical way possible so you don't have any waste of fabric or as little waste as possible. I use a pair of gingers for my cutting shears, and they have lasted me through well over a dozen projects without needing to be sharpened still. I've gone through a lot of pairs of the orange Fiskars, and I gotta say, it is definitely more sustainable to invest in a high quality pair of shears than just constantly buying new ones. I do occasionally cut things with that rotary tool you see in the back, especially for curves. It's a lot easier. The pattern for the underdress is by Zoe DIY, which I will link in the description. I saved all of my scraps, which I'll show you at the end, and every single little piece of thread, and I plan on making a plushie and stuffing it with all these scrap items, including some Ava foam scraps too. I did end up serging pretty much all the raw edges just to finish things off, make them last longer, and so they won't fray. I finished off all the edges of the underdress with bias tape as well as making straps. It's another great way to use scrap fabric. Because this is the underdress and you're never gonna see it, I didn't add a hook and eye closure at the top of the zipper. Why use materials if you don't need them? I did pick up dye for the shirt. because I couldn't find the right color I wanted, but I ended up having to dye it multiple times and use a lot of dye actually. So that was not ideal. The bottles are recyclable at least, but the labels are not. Again, I used bias tape to finish off the edges. I used a free pattern from Zoe DIY, I'll link that in the description. I ended up using the wrong side of the fabric because I thought the satiny side was way too shiny for Mulan. The bottom of the shirt has some elastic from my stash. Mulan's jacket is kind of like a kimono. I guess I could call it a faux mono. So I used a kimono pattern from Simplicity. This was heavily altered compared to the actual pattern. It is lined on the inside. It is a combo of machine sewing and hand sewing. I made the piped seams with some bias tape I made myself and some cording I had in my stash. I used Ginny D's tutorial for this. When fully closed, it has a seamless look like Mulan's dress. The sash was during a major con crunch, and so I didn't have time to fully line it. It is interfaced heavily. I used the dress pattern to make the sash form-fitting, and there is a zipper on the side to get in and out of it. It does not separate though, so I have to pull it over my head. The pink sash is made from a stretchy fabric that I just turned inside out, and it has a very heavyweight facing on the part that goes around my waist. Disney princesses apparently don't have seams, so I just usually line it up so you can't see them. Again, this just goes over my head. The shoes are nothing special, they're just something I use from my everyday closet. Full transparency, I did get the fan off of Amazon, but I did pair it with a bunch of other items to save on carbon emissions, and I also chose the longest amount of shipping. When I order contact lenses, I typically choose the 1-year option, so you get the most use out of them. My plan is to use these for other cosplays as well. Like I said before, I saved every single scrap and piece. There are a few other projects in this box. If you'd like to see a video of the plushie I make from these scraps, please let me know in the comments. I did have to throw 3 of the dye bottles in the recycling. They are recycled in my area. Make sure to check your local recycling to see if number 2 is available in your area. And I did take the labels off as well because those are not recyclable. There are a few foam scraps and probably some packaging I forgot to take inventory of, but these were the largest items of trash essentially that I had to throw away or use for other projects. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you made it this far, please comment Mulan in the comments so I know that you watched the whole thing. Also, if you like this video and would like to learn more about cosplay and sustainability, please leave a comment below on what you'd like me to cover next. I have a whole list of things planned for this series, but I would really like to know what people would like to learn. If you have a friend that you think would like this video, please share it with them. And last but not least, don't forget to stay sustainably Sakura.